The truck door creaked shut, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness of the pre-dawn air. A shiver ran down my spine, and it wasn't just the slight chill of the approaching autumn. The silver glint I'd seen from the road was closer now, partially obscured by a tangle of weeds and tall grass. It looked like someone had tossed a hubcap out here, left it to rust in the vast emptiness of Peterson's cornfield. Except, I knew what lay beyond this field. No junkyard, no farmhouse, no place for a hubcap to come from. Just miles and miles of corn, stretching out like a green ocean until they met the shadowy tree line at the horizon. My hand trembled as I reached for the flashlight tucked under the seat. Its beam, weak as a dying man's breath, did little to pierce the oppressive darkness at the edge of the field. Each rustle of leaves, each sigh of wind through the cornstalks, sounded unnaturally loud, amplified by the frantic beating of my own heart. Then I saw it. Not a reflection this time, but a solid shape rising from the earth itself. Metallic, ominous. The flashlight beam shook in my grasp, dancing across the contoured surface. It was a curve, vast and smooth, disappearing into the shadows. A child's voice, small and afraid, whispered from somewhere in the back of my mind, "Don't go any closer. They don't like it when you remember." My breath caught in my throat. That voice, it was my voice, but younger, tinged with a terror I couldn't place. The hair on the back of my neck prickled with a sudden, irrational fear. This was crazy. It was just a piece of scrap metal, some farmer's discarded machinery, half swallowed by the earth. It had to be. But as I took another step, the ground seemed to vibrate beneath my feet. A low hum, barely audible at first, but growing steadily louder, throbbed in the air. It resonated deep within my chest, a physical sensation that stole my breath and sent a shiver of primal terror through me. This was no hubcap. This was something else. Something impossible. Sheriff Thompson found me slumped against the steering wheel, mumbling about lights and muttering about how the corn in Gatlin Creek had a way of swallowing things whole. I let him think what he wanted. Easier to play the day's fool, the sleep-deprived night shift worker who dozed off at the wheel. Truth was, the fear sitting shotgun with me that night had a way of making a man forget what lies he'd planned to tell. Back in my own house, the silence felt thick and heavy, suffocating almost. My reflection in the bathroom mirror was a stranger, eyes haunted, face pale and drawn. The normalcy of my life, the chipped mug on the counter, the worn bathrobe hanging on the hook, seemed to mock me. A stark contrast to the growing unease twisting in my gut. Sleep offered no escape. The nightmares came in fractured images, flashes of blinding light and chilling cold. I'd wake up in a sweat, heart racing. The phantom sensation of unseen hands holding me down, probing, exploring. Days blurred into weeks, each one an exercise in pretending that life hadn't been cleaved in two by a single, terrifying encounter. I went to work at the lumber mill. The familiar whine of saws and the smell of fresh-cut pine a poor substitute for the peace I craved. I ate my meals, mechanically going through the motions, the taste turning to ashes in my mouth. The fear, though, that was a constant companion. Lurking just beneath the surface, a coiled snake ready to strike. And the worst part? I was starting to remember. Flashes of things I shouldn't know. Glimpses of a truth too horrifying to face. It began subtly, a whisper at the edge of awareness, a cold spot in the middle of the night, a sudden inexplicable gust of wind rattling the windows of my house. Paranoia, maybe, the kind that took root in the quiet corners of your mind after a too close call, after a night spent staring into the abyss of the unknown. The headache started a week later, not the dull ache of too much coffee or a sleepless night, but something sharper, deeper. A spike of pain that lanced through my skull whenever I tried to focus on anything beyond that night. The memory was a dark room, locked tight, with each passing day the urge to unlock it growing stronger. And then, the dreams started, always the same. I was strapped to a cold metallic table, a blinding light searing my eyes, stealing my breath. Hands, if you could call them that, long and thin, with too many joints, hovered above me. And the eyes, God, those eyes, black, almond-shaped, devoid of any trace of warmth or recognition. Watching. Always watching. I'd wake up with a gasp, the sheets tangled around me, soaked in a cold sweat. My heart hammered against my ribs like a frantic prisoner trying to escape. It took hours, sometimes until the weak light of dawn seeped through the cracks in the curtains, to convince myself it was just a dream. One morning, I woke to find something new. A mark on my left hand, just below my thumb. A small, perfectly circular scar. An angry red welt against the pale canvas of my skin. It hadn't been there before. Of that I was sure. Panic swelled in my chest, a suffocating wave threatening to drag me under. This wasn't normal. This was something else. Something sinister. The old man's words echoed in my head. They don't like it when you talk about it. They watch. They listen. Crazy talk. The ravings of a lonely old coot who spent too much time staring at the stars. At least that's what I told myself. But deep down, a knot of fear tightened in my gut. I started paying attention to things I hadn't noticed before. A black sedan parked at the end of my street. Engine idling. A man in a dark suit behind the wheel, his face obscured by shadows. A clicking on the other end of the line when I picked up the phone. Gone a moment later. Was it my imagination? Or was I being watched? The local library became my sanctuary. A place where the musty smell of old books and the quiet hum of fluorescent lights offered a thin veil of normalcy. I devoured everything I could find on UFOs, alien abductions, government conspiracies. Each story, each grainy photograph, each eyewitness account sent a fresh jolt of terror through me. One night, I stumbled upon a website dedicated to documenting UFO sightings in the area. My heart leaped into my throat as I scrolled through the entries. Dates, times, descriptions, all eerily similar to my own experience. And then I saw it. A post from a few years back, describing strange lights over Route 37. A missing person case that had gone cold. The name sent a shiver down my spine. Samuel Hemmings. The old man hadn't been crazy. He'd been trying to warn me. The phone rang at 2 a.m., the shrill ring shattering the stillness of my house like a gunshot. My heart hammered a frantic tattoo against my ribs as I fumbled for the receiver. Who would call at this hour? The voice on the other end of the line was flat, devoid of inflection. A voice that slithered into my ear like a venomous snake. "You shouldn't have gone looking for him," the voice hissed. "He was better off, forgetting." A chill, colder than the frigid air seeping in through the cracks in my window, shot down my spine. The phone clattered to the floor as a wave of dizziness washed over me. The room, bathed in the pale glow of the streetlight outside my window, seemed to tilt, the familiar shapes of furniture distorting into menacing silhouettes. A pressure built in my head, a vice tightening around my skull. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to fight off the rising tide of nausea, the sudden disorientation. It felt like that night on the highway, the world spinning out of control, time slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. Then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. The pressure in my head eased, replaced by a dull throb behind my eyes. The room settled back into place, the menacing shadows retreating to their rightful corners. Only, something was different. I was no longer alone. Standing in the doorway, backlit by an ethereal glow that seemed to emanate from its very being, was a figure. Tall, slender, with skin the color of ash and eyes that burned with an unsettling intensity. The air crackled with an unseen energy, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. The being tilted its head, a gesture that would have been almost human if not for the complete lack of emotion in its obsidian eyes. "We've been watching you," it whispered, its voice a hollow rasp that seemed to vibrate deep within my bones. "And we've decided it's time for you to remember." The days after the visitor were a gray fog. A hollowness settled in my gut, a constant reminder of their power, their absolute control. Fear, raw and gnawing, became my only companion. The job at the mill went the way of everything else. Forgotten shifts, missed calls, tools dropped in a daze. Foreman's warnings became threats. The pink slip a grim punctuation mark on my unraveling life. Didn't matter. Money seemed a trivial concern when your whole world was tilting on an axis controlled by beings from another galaxy. The bottle in the bottom drawer of my desk became my confidant. Each swallow of cheap whiskey offered a momentary reprieve, a blurring of the edges of reality that was somehow preferable to the sharp focus of my terror. The nightmares became relentless, no longer confined to the darkness of sleep. They seeped into my waking hours, flashes of cold steel, and those judging eyes superimposed over the familiar landscapes of Gatlin Creek. The diner on Main Street transformed into a sterile examination room. Mrs. Henderson's cheerful chatter replaced by the hum of alien machinery. Loneliness, vast and suffocating, pressed down on me. Talking about it, sharing the burden of my experience, had seemed like the only way out. But Hemming's fate, the chilling words of the visitor, had slammed that door shut. I was alone, trapped in a nightmare with no escape. And with each passing day, the memory of that night, the memories they were forcing to the surface, chipped away at my sanity, leaving me hollowed out, a vessel for their terror. The flickering light of the television danced across my face, casting grotesque shadows on the wall behind me. Another night, another blurry procession of talking heads promising the apocalypse was nigh. Only this time, for the first time, a part of me wondered if they weren't just peddling crazy talk. The phone rang, yanking me from the depths of a whiskey-fueled stupor. I fumbled for the receiver, the words catching in my throat. "Is this... Are you the one they took?" A woman's voice, shaky but insistent. Hope, a dormant ember buried deep under layers of fear and despair, sparked to life. For weeks I had been adrift, alone in a sea of silence. Now, finally, a voice reaching out from the storm. She told me her name, Sarah, and spoke in a torrent of hushed whispers. She'd seen my story online, on one of those UFO forums. She'd had the dreams too, the scars, the feeling of being watched. "There's a group of us," she breathed, her voice thick with urgency. "We meet. We try to understand, to fight back." She gave me an address, a date, a time, a flicker of defiance, the first I'd felt since that night on the highway, surged through me. Maybe I wasn't alone after all. Maybe there was a way out of this madness. 2 days later, I found myself on the outskirts of a small town, the name a jumble of unfamiliar syllables. Sarah's directions had led me to a rundown diner, the neon sign flickering a sickly yellow in the twilight. This was it, my chance to fight back, to reclaim my life. As I stepped out of the car, a black sedan pulled up behind me, sleek and silent as a predator. 2 men emerged, their faces hard, their eyes shielded by dark glasses. Panic, icy and familiar, tightened its grip on my chest. One of them flashed a badge. "FBI," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. "We need to ask you some questions." The glimmer of hope I'd clung to for 48 long hours shattered, replaced by the bone-chilling realization that there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They were everywhere, and they weren't letting go. The air in the interrogation room was thick with tension, the metallic tang of fear clinging to the back of my throat. The harsh glare of the fluorescent light overhead amplified the throbbing in my head, a relentless counterpoint to the questions being hurled at me. Each one a hammer blow to my already fractured sanity. "Tell us about the night you saw the lights. Describe the beings. Where is Dr. Grant?" Their voices, cold and sharp as surgical steel, echoed through the small, windowless room, each question chipping away at the fragile wall I'd built around my terror. I kept seeing those blank black eyes, the subtle shift of their weight as they moved closer, a silent ballet of menace. These men, with their neatly pressed suits and their emotionless facades, were cut from the same cloth, extensions of a power I couldn't begin to comprehend. "We know you're hiding something," one of them said, his voice a low growl. "We know about the implant." My blood ran cold. They knew. But how? Had Dr. Grant betrayed me? Or had they already gotten to her, silenced her before she could even utter a warning? Despair, heavy and suffocating, wrapped itself around me, squeezing the fight right out of my lungs. "It's for your own good," the other one said, his tone almost soothing. "We can help you, but you have to cooperate." He leaned closer, his breath hot on my ear. "Or we can make things very difficult." The threat hung in the air, heavy and ominous. My body trembled with a primal fear, the instinctual knowledge that I was hopelessly outmatched. They had me. They had always had me, and there was nothing I could do to stop them. They released me just before sunrise. No apologies, no explanations. Just a curt nod and the unspoken warning in their eyes. My car keys were tossed back to me like a bad penny, landing on the gravel with a dull thud. As I drove away, the rising sun a searing red gash in the rearview mirror. I could feel their gaze burning into me, a tangible reminder that I was being watched, every move scrutinized. The days that followed were a hollow echo of normalcy. I went back to my empty house, to my half-unpacked boxes, to the remnants of a life abruptly interrupted. Gatlin Creek, once a sanctuary of familiar faces and routines, now felt like a stage set. The people in it actors reciting lines from a script I no longer understood. Dr. Grant was gone, vanished, just like Hemmings, just like the others. The only trace she'd ever existed was the faint scent of lavender that clung to the worn armchair in her office, a ghostly perfume that made my stomach clench with dread. I had tried calling Sarah, the woman from the forum, her number scribbled on a napkin that now felt like a relic from a forgotten dream. The line was dead. A cold knot of certainty tightened in my gut. They'd gotten to her too. The dreams, once a terrifying glimpse into the past, now took on a horrifying prescience. I saw myself, strapped to that cold steel table, my body contorting in ways that defied the natural order, pain a symphony conducted by unseen hands. And those eyes, always watching. Their gaze a tangible weight pressing down on me, stealing the air from my lungs. The implant under my skin throbbed with a dull, insistent ache, a constant reminder of their presence, their control. I was a prisoner in my own body, a puppet dancing to a tune only they could hear. And the worst part, I knew, with chilling certainty, that the show was far from over. The cornfields whispered a symphony of dread as I stood there, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of blood and bruised purple. It had all led back to this, back to the place where it had all begun. They'd seen to that, made sure of it, orchestrated my every move like a puppeteer manipulating a broken doll. The implant pulsed beneath my skin, a metronome keeping time with the fear that hammered against my ribs. This was it, the final act. I could feel it in the marrow of my bones. A low hum vibrated through the air, growing steadily louder, until it felt like the earth itself was humming a mournful dirge. The sky rippled, a shimmering heat haze distorting the twilight, and then the light began to bleed through. Not the pale, yellowish light from that first night, but a blinding white radiance that stole my breath and turned the world to silver. The craft settled gracefully onto the field, a monstrous metallic teardrop that seemed to suck the air out of the sky. The world shrunk, narrowed to a single point of blinding light and suffocating dread. This time there was no running, no hiding. As the light engulfed me, the terror that had been my constant companion for weeks, for years, for what felt like lifetimes, unexpectedly receded, replaced by a strange sense of rightness. This was where I belonged, where I'd always belonged. The last thing I saw before the light swallowed me whole was my reflection in the polished metal hull of the ship. My face, pale and gaunt, stared back at me, eyes wide and vacant. Only, it wasn't my face anymore. It was their face. The eyes, once familiar and human, now shimmered with an alien light. The pupils black and bottomless, mirroring the vast emptiness of the sky above. And then, a single thought, chilling and alien, echoed through my mind, a voice I recognized as both mine and not mine at all. "We are home."